welcome to the Dailies on Echo Television International, where we keep you updated with all that is happening from the papers. Today being the 24th of October 2023, quite a number of things on the paper. We've seen that the federal government have succeeded in stopping the $11 billion scored against Nigeria, talking about the process and industrial development. And then also we'll look at what the Supreme Court said concerning the new evidence that the PDP submitted to the court yesterday. These and many other stories are what we will be looking at on the paper. I am Sarah Elisha Dasham, and I'll be doing the program together with Rachel Tanzay. Good morning.
Good morning, Sarah.
We're live on Facebook and on YouTube. To our viewers, you can do well to join us live there and also drop your views on any of the story that is of interest to you. And we will go straight into the paper. I will be starting with the Leadership newspaper. And on the Leadership, we have Wike orders strict enforcement for tax revenue laws. You can find that story on page 14 of the Leadership newspaper. And on the PNID, UK court reverses the $11 billion award against Nigeria. Detail of that story can be found on page 7. Still trending is still the PNID. We have UK dismisses the $11 billion damages against Nigeria. And on numbers, we have federal government signed 1 billion naira deal with the IHS Towers. More detail of that can be found in the paper. Federal government tackles illiquidity grant amnesty to forex outside banking system. You can start on the front page and continue inside the paper. The big story on the paper: Supreme Court raises pauses over Chicago varsity documents, with the writer saying reverses judgment in Atiku Obi appeals, dismisses the APM suit. Detail of that in the paper. Fine Smart Adeyemi 2 million naira over Kogi APC governorship ticket. Federal government IHS Nigeria launched 3 million talent learning initiative. You can find more about the initiative in the paper. CSO ACPAC seek unbundling of INEC over Electoral Act, with detail on page 7. Naira crashes to 1,210 to the dollar, where we saw that it has been going between 1,190 to 1,002. Now it has crashes to 1,210. This is really a sad one. You can find more detail on that will affect goods and commodities in the market. And on international scene, we have Israel-Hamas war. Gaza gets more aid. Death toll hit 6,400, with detail found on page 6. We have a picture story where we have the president together with other ministers during the opening ceremony of the 29th Nigeria Economic Summit in Abuja yesterday. You can do well to grab the Leadership and read any other story that is of interest to you.
On Blueprint newspaper, FEC targets $5 billion annual humanitarian poverty alleviation trust fund. India takes over as Voice of Nigeria DG vows to make a difference. And on 2024 Hajj, you'll be working to airlift pilgrims from Cargo Airport. This is a statement coming from Buni. You can find details on page 5. Nigeria missed Russian-Ukraine war, gas demand windfall opportunity. This is a statement coming from the federal government. And the big story on the paper: $11 billion PNID judgment victory for long-exploited Africa. A statement coming from Tinubu says our continent on receiving end of economic conspiracies. Ill-fated gas project obtained by fraud court rules. AFCC hails verdict. You can find details of the big story on page 6. Supreme Court throws out Adeyemi's appeal against APC. Ododo slams 2 million naira fine. Lagos leads as states generate 1.9 trillion naira as IGR in 2022. Naira woos heighten hits 1,200 naira to a dollar, exchange rate disparity widens. You can find details on page 22. And at the downside of the paper, Supreme Court reverses judgment in Atiku's petition against Tinubu. APM withdraws appeal. Obi awaits verdict. Resort to blackmail, can't win case in court, APC tells PDP. And that's all the news on Blueprint newspaper.
On Daily Sun newspaper, we have the Federal Executive Council have approved setting up of Poverty Alleviation Trust Fund, with the rider to remit $5 billion annually to the fund. OK's draft policy, solid minerals development with detail found on page 27. The big story for Daily Sun says Supreme Court prepares for poll judgment day, reverses ruling in Atiku and Obi's petition against Tinubu. President insists ex-VP fresh evidence alien to law. And we have the APM drop charges after banishing for filing frivolous appeals. You can find more on page 6. President applauds as Nigeria wins the $11 billion PNID case. We have been validated. This is coming from the AGF. And permit me to read a little of that, where we have that Nigeria has finally succeeded in stopping the enforcement of the $11 billion arbitration award in favor of process and industrial development, that is the PNID, against the country. A judgment delivered by Justin Robin Nobels of the Commercial Court of England and Wales upheld Nigerians' prayer on the ground that the ill-fated gas processing contract was obtained by fraud. On January 31, 2017, a private arbitration tribunal ordered Nigeria to pay $6.6 billion to the PNID plus interest beginning from March 20th. Following the judgment, Nigeria applied for an extension of the time and relief for sanction. And also we're having the president saying that this is a victory, saying the fact that even developing worlds can develop, and we're really happy that Nigeria has been actually being validated from such a thing. So you can do well to find more detail of that particular story on page 4 of the Daily Sun newspaper. Other stories still on Daily Sun, we have fuel scarcity may worsen as ATC firms dump petrol import permit over forex crisis. You can find more of that on page 22. This is really a very hard one for Nigerians at this moment. Well, let's see how things turn out to be. You can find more detail of that story on page 22. Umba woes investors with juicy opportunities, ease of doing business policy with detail on page 2. We have federal government achieve $1 trillion economic target in 2026, $4 trillion in 2035. This is coming from Tinubu, with the writer saying vows to clear forex backlog. You can find that on page 25. Also, we have an autonomy, parliamentary workers to shut national and state assemblies. You can find more detail of what that story means on page 27. We still have the picture story where we can see the Minister of State for Agriculture and Food Security, Abdullahi Sabi, Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Abubakar, and also the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of Economy, Wali Edu, during Nigeria's Economic Summit theme. And the theme for that summit says pathway to sustainable economic transformation and inclusion. In Abuja yesterday, we hope after the summit we'll be able to come up with tangible plans on how the economy of Nigeria can thrive. You can find more detail of any other story inside the paper.
On Nigerian Tribune, students' loan takes off January. A statement coming from the president says plans on the way to improve foreign exchange contracts, fuel subsidy payments will be short-lived, he adds. And on impeachment, again, Ondo Assembly writes CJ to constitute panel to investigate Aiyedatiwa. Federal government targets $5 billion annually for humanitarian poverty alleviation tax funds. OK's $3.45 billion for 5 projects, including $700 million for adolescent girl child education. You can find details on page 12. Weekend forces tax clearance certificate as precondition for business transactions in FCT. Supreme Court dismisses Adeyemi's appeal against APC Ododo. You can find details on page 22. Adwa Investment Foundations defined for launch today. You can find details on page 12. The big story on the paper, PNID excitement as Nigeria wins $11 billion UK court case. Corrupt officials, private firms can no longer hold nation hostage. A statement coming from President Tinubu. Judgment removes risks to Nigeria's assets abroad. A statement coming from the AGF. You can find details of the story on page 4. How I beheaded man sold his part to Islamic clerics for 50,000 naira, suspect says. And on autonomy, parliamentary staff set to shut down national state assemblies. 40 women in Nigeria die daily from breast cancer. This is a report coming from BRECAN. You might want to find details of this report on page 25. Another downside of the paper, Supreme Court reserves judgment in Obi Atiku's appeals against Tinubu's election. Dismisses APM's appeal. Defeat awaits you, APC tells Atiku and PDP. You can find details on page 21, and that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
All right, let's take a look at the Guardian newspaper with the big caption here that says host communities kick as proposed PIA review shrink 3% allocation. And we are having a little write-up under that say the host communities must fund the new portal introduced by the NUPRC, hire and pay lawyers and chartered accountant with at least 10 years experience. You want to know what that entails and what that means, you can do well to grab the paper and read detailed on page 6. As injunction elapses, Edo Assembly reopens Ayide Tiwa impeachment process. APC cake as Supreme Court reserved judgment in Atiku and Obi's appeal. PNID $11 billion award against Nigeria obtained by fraud. Tinubu hails the victory. Tinubu targets $1 trillion economic hopeful for $10 billion inflow to ease forex crisis. And we have Adeyemi loses again as Supreme Court affirmed Usman Odudu APC candidate. Federal government IHS Tower seal $1 billion naira deal on digital communities. Detail found on page 4. Osun suspend foreign trips for officials. You can find more of that story as well on page 4. And that's all on the Guardian newspaper.
On the Nation newspaper, the big story is Supreme Court grills Atiku's lawyer over CSU document. Apex Court dismisses APM's appeal, reserves judgment in Atiku Obi versus Tinubu. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 5. We have coast clear for Ododo as Supreme Court dismisses Adeyemi's appeal. Federal government confirms January start of student loan scheme. You can find details of both story on page 2 and 4. Victory in $11 billion PNID UK case excites President and EFCC. We have Forex crisis, federal government to inject $10 billion in weeks. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 4. And at the downside of the paper, we have Senate uncovers duplications in East-West Road contracts. More details can be found on page 7, and that's all the news on the Nation newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at the Punch newspaper. Still talking about federal government plans $10 billion to stabilize the Naira, ICE and NPCL for Forex. You can find detail on page 2. FEC OK's 3.45 billion Naira World Bank loan for power and others. You want to know what the others are, do well to read more detail on page 9. The big story on Tinubu's certificate, prove alleged forgery beyond reasonable doubt. Supreme Court tells Atiku with the rider saying court reserved judgment on OB. LP appeal dismisses the APM case. Atiku insists on the CSU evidence. Ex-VP disposition invalid, says Tinubu. More detail can be found inside the paper. We have a picture story here where we can see Onyan Dam, flood sack Ogun communities. Governor declares emergency. We can see what is happening. A lot of things, houses have been swallowed by the flood. You can do well to look closely on page 4 and 5 to read detail of that story. Israel arrests 120 militant. EU backs Gaza aid. You can find detail on page 7. Slay Nigerian student. NIDCOM probes mother. NAS demand justice. You can find more detail of that story on page 4 and 5. Federal government IHS plan 1 billion naira tech talent communities. You can find more of that on page 24. And that's all on the Punch newspaper.
On the Matrix, Naira speculators days over as federal government is set to digitize FX transactions. A statement coming from Wali Edun. UN raises alarm, says displaced Gazans returning to North despite risks. You can find more details on page 20. Supreme Court reserves judgment in Article's appeal, dismisses APM's appeal. The big story on the paper, $11 billion PNID debt, Nigeria's long road to victory. How Osibajo intervention swung case in Nigeria's favor. Relief for Sheshaw as court clears him of corruption. And we have Tinubu Nigerians hail judgment. You can find more details on page 2. Lagos government shuts Alaba International Market. FEC supports creation of a new policy to control solid minerals industry. Nigeria's petrol daily consumption reduces by 33.58%. A report coming from NMDPRA. You can find details on page 13. Student loan scheme takes off in January 2024. Statement coming from President Tinubu. No tax clearance certificate, no business in Abuja. Statement coming from Wike, the Minister of the FCT. You can find more details of his statement on the front page and continue on page 3. And that's all the news on the Matrix newspaper.
You can see it seems the government are listening to what was on the paper yesterday concerning the issue of the student loan that was meant to, start off from September down to October. I see the government is coming out to tell us that they have actually make sure that that is going to kick off from January. But we hope that we'll not have another excuse that will make them to postpone it. We hope that this will be ample time for them to be able to create all they need to create. Yesterday, you and I talked extensively about what is needed to be done, particular policies that need to be put in place so that once implementation starts, we see that everything will go smoothly without hitches. But when we see that certain things are not being done, then definitely that is when we begin to see that the scheme might not run for very long. Very few people will end up benefiting and others will not be able to benefit. So I hope that this will be an ample time for the government to prepare. We hope that there will be no issue of whatever it is, fraud or issue of malpractice in any way where we'll see that money that was supposed to be sent will not be sent. So our fingers are crossed. We guess this will be a 2024 plan as it looks from the look of all things. But we hope to see better implementation coming in regards to issues when it comes to education, because this is a sector that really needs to be given the attention. Because when we give it attention, I mean, it's not the sector you say you want to generate funds for, but if you do the right thing to that sector, eventually you begin to see that when the right things are being done, other sectors will get the impact from this particular sector. So I'm happy to see that the government have come out to reply to the fact that a lot of people are saying it's 3 months and nothing is coming from the government. So we're happy that they have rectified that. So students should just be relaxed, but that just means that a lot of students will not be able to make it to school till January, if that is what it looks like. So you have to start sourcing for other means of getting your school fees, your tuition fee to be able to pay. But we just hope that that scheme will start as soon as possible in January. All right, let's take a look at the next paper, which is the New Telegraph newspaper. And on Forex, federal government create framework to clear the backlog of obligations to digitize market targets 24.54 trillion naira inflow into federation account. You can do well to start reading on the front page and continue inside the paper. Elumelo seek recapitalization of insurance classes to 20 billion naira and 30 billion naira. Detail found in the paper. Other stories still the New Telegraph. We have Court OK suit seeking to sack the new EFCC chair. Now you begin to wonder what really is the problem with the new EFCC chairman. I remember you and I, Richard, saying that whatever you need to do, make sure you dig deep. Whatever you need to verify before you actually give an appointment. Over the few weeks and months, we've been seeing either an appointment is being made and then later on it's being revoked. I'm like, no, I really didn't make this appointment. Like that of the 24-year-old that was being removed and then being replaced with another person which will be capable. So we're seeing that OK have okayed the suit seeking to sack the new FCC chairman. So for those who want to know why they intend to do that, they should read deeper. But I just think that there are certain assignment or there are certain investigation that needs to be done. So when we have somebody on seat, we will not have a reason why you want to take the person and why, because you've done all your assignment. But when the right things are not being done, proper investigations are not being done, we still come back to where we started. just like we are having the issue in the Supreme Court right now. And we will not stop emphasizing, if only the right things were being done from the very beginning, we wouldn't be in this position whereby a certificate will come up and say that it's being forged or not. So our fingers are crossed, and we hope to see what the court will come up with that story on page 7 of the New Telegraph.
It feels almost like Nigerians are enjoying the whole court thing. It's almost like our leaders are enjoying the whole court thing. It's like everybody is just refusing to do their job because they can take you to the court. So it's like, let's do a shady job. Let's not go into details. Let's not do the appropriate things. And then we just give the court to just give the final, because it feels like that. Because what court and everything has to be settled in the court. It means somebody is comfortably sleeping on their job and not doing what is expected of them to do, because this is barely a week into office. We saw this last week on the paper, his picture with the president welcoming him into his office and all of that. And then now we're seeing there is a suit, and the court have approved the suit against him, meaning they will look into it, and then perhaps he might be sacked or not. And then you wonder, why do we have to keep going to the court? Then it's like this, almost like Nigerians are enjoying the saga of the whole court thing. People in position are not doing their job. They are not doing the digging. They are not doing the investigation. They are not paying attention to details, because it's like we have the court to keep doing the job for us. So I just hope that we move past this, because it's becoming a nuisance. The whole court thing is no longer pleasing on any level at all, and it is very tiring. And I just hope that they also get tired about it. It's about time we face the real issues in Nigeria, because if we're having 86 firms, Sele for example, dumping their license for fuel importation, we have no idea how many people are employed under these firms. So whether we like it or not, we are waking up to unemployment. We are waking up to people being laid off their job. So what is the federal government doing? We need everybody to be in their offices doing their jobs. Let's move and let's grow. Enough of the court cases. Let's start facing the real problems in Nigeria, and then eventually we will start seeing some development happening.
That's why, talking about the issue of the P and ID that we are celebrating and being happy. Yeah, we've been vindicated finally that we did not have anything to do with that. But I think rather than just rejoicing at this point in time, we should rejoice and then look, how can we start clearing our name from any corruption list, any list of fraud. And then just looking at the EFCC chairman, it looks more like he was actually coming out with so much fire, saying that a lot of people, he's going to be on their toe and to investigate whatever needs to be investigated. But let's leave it to the court. Let's hope to see what that suit that has been submitted will actually give birth to. Still a New Telegraph newspaper, we have IMBA unveil business opportunities for Indonesia investors. You can find more of the story inside the paper. And on the FCTA, personal income tax defaulters to spend 3 years in jail. We're still following up the story of, if you do not have your tax clearance form, no business for you. So for those who default, end up spending about 3 years in jail. So you can do well to read more detail inside the paper. And also we have the big story on the PNID. UK court squashes the $11 billion fine slam on Nigeria. Clears former Lagos IG Shashori of bribery charges. Ruling proves state won't be held hostage by private firms. Corrupt official conspiracy coming from Tinubu. It saves the federal government $11 billion. You can find more of that on page 2. Adeleke bars government officials from foreign trips. You can find that inside the paper. And I think somehow it looks like good news to me when we're seeing that government officials from going for foreign trips. So rather than spending our money outside, use the money to do 1 or 2 things within the state. And where it might look like he's stepping on the toe of a lot of people, but if he's doing it with a good intention, I think that is for the growth of the state as well. Still a New Telegraph newspaper, UNILAG scholars expert route for internationalization of varsities. You can find that on page 14 and 15. And on the LPG, terminal operator sabotaging us, marketers tell Senate. With detail found on page 26. FEC OK's $5 billion humanitarian poverty alleviation fund. Approves $700 million World Bank financing for adolescent girls' education. deployment of security, tech to check illegal mining. You can find that on page 4. Supreme Court reserves judgment in Atiku Obi's appeal against Tinubu's election. You can find that on page 2, 3, and 26. We have a picture story. You can do well to grab the paper and read more detail of any other story that is of interest to you.
On the Daily Times newspaper, Advan drags Akon ministry to court. The big story, $11 billion UK case versus PNID. Buhari Malami Nigeria win. After over 5 years, Commercial Court of England and Wales delivers verdict. You can find details on page 5. At NES, Tinubu promises to honor legitimate FX obligations and restore market confidence. Crisis rocks FMC Asaba over interns. You can find details on page 3. Senate uncovers fraud in East-West road contracts. Tension drops nationwide as Supreme Court reserves judgment to future date. This is under Atiku Obi's appeal over Tinubu's election. And at the downside of the paper, a daily case suspends foreign trips by government officials. You can find details on page 5, and that's all the news on the Daily Times newspaper.
Actually, looking at the fact that Senate uncovers fraud in the East-West road contract, we remember that they said the road contract should be on a hold for the meantime, talking about when Umahi wanted to start the concrete routes. And he said it should be on hold. And here we're seeing that the reason why it's on hold possibly is for them to actually do 1 or 2 investigation into certain contracts that are being given, because we're seeing that some of these roads, it's like it's been duplicated. The contracts are being duplicated. That is to say that contractors are collecting more. And we see that was the first problem the EFCC new chairman, brought up before the Senate, telling them that he discovered that a number of, procurement of fraud and all of that was being handled, and the money, you could actually use it to create quite a number of roads, schools for a number of kids. I mean, making even houses estate where the government can give out to people and then generate funding into the country. So it's high time we begin to see right things being done. I really have to applaud the Senate for a job well done here by discovering this. But that is just to tell us that there is quite a number of duplications happening right under the nose of the Senate that they are not aware of. And so I think that it's high time they do their investigations thoroughly. They shouldn't leave any stone unturned, because a number of people have just walk around freely. Meanwhile, they have actually cost the country quite a number of money that should have been used or being directed to one thing or the other. So I'm really happy, and I hope that the people or the contractors or whoever gave out this contract that has a hand in all of these things will be brought to book, because it's high time we allow the rule of law to have its place. A number of people have gone scot-free with certain things. And so if we are celebrating that we have been vindicated for $11 billion, and then I think it's high time we begin to look internally and say, what can we do to make sure things are being put in order? Money is not being lost on projects that we have no idea whatsoever. We're having, when you're using Nigerian road, Richard, especially talking about the East-West road, sometimes you begin to wonder, some of the potholes are as deep as a well. And then you wonder, a contract was given for this road project. What happened? The road is still the way it is. And then we have no answer for that. So I'm happy the Senate have actually done their job and discover all of these. And I hope that we'll begin to see more revelations in our papers concerning. That's the only way we know that our senators and our ministers are actually working to make sure that the right things are being done.
Well, certain money is too big for you to just lose it as if it's child's play. So I believe till we're sincere and we're willing to fight corruption, we will keep seeing flimsy mistakes that are not even supposed to happen in the first place, such as duplicate of a contract. It's for road is easy, seller. Like let's say is Zaria Road. There's no 2 Zaria roads. There's no 3 Zaria roads. You use your coordinates. These are engineers, these are science people, these are intelligent people, these are people who knows location, knows region, who knows geography, who knows everywhere. There's no duplicate of one road. You can't find the same road in the same place twice. So how would you come and somebody is giving you a contract with the same name of a road that you have already awarded a contract to the same road? So how are we missing out this kind of details? And you want Nigerians to believe that it's a mistake, a contract of billions of naira that is costing the Nigerian economy, that this road could have helped traders, as this rope could have helped boost businesses, and you're joking with it as if it's 10,000 naira that got missing somewhere in one transaction or the other. So if we're really willing to fight corruption, we will stop seeing this kind of thing repeating itself, because you can't have a contractor bringing you a contract with the same location, with the same name of road, with the same number of kilometers, and then you mistake it for another for another road. It's the same road. If it is this road here, it is this road. If it is that road here, it is that road. But then you keep seeing flimsy mistakes, and you know that there is no doubt that people are deliberately sleeping on their job, not doing the right thing, trying to cover up things that shouldn't even happen in the first place. So I believe that the AFCC we should not be finding a situation where we are having the AFCC chairman having to face the issue of being in court not knowing his fate, because there's work that needs to be done. 2.9 trillion naira to fraud for procurement and contract is a big enough money. We're looking at the money that could have gone into our debt servicing, because it's about that amount we have spent in the first and the second quarter of the year. This is money that could have done something to the economy, and we're losing it to fraud, a fraud that is inevitable in the first place. So let the people need to wake up and let AFCC do their job. There's a need for probing. There's a need to flush out those people who are sleeping or just trying to cover up flimsy things that shouldn't even happen in the first place.
Give contracts, you have to go back and actually
Exactly.
supervise it and be sure that the contract you gave with that particular code number and all of that is being carried out.
Yes.
Well, Rachel, before we move further to other papers, I'd love us to take a break at this moment. Quite a number of stories for you to actually air your views on. So when we get back, or when we come back from the break, we'll actually get to hear what your own views are or your contribution concerning the stories. Please stay tuned with us. Thank you for staying tuned. It's still the Dailies. We have been looking at a number of stories on the paper, and we would love to hear your views about any of the story that is of interest to you. Please do remember to reduce the volume of your TV set. Try to summarize your point in a minute so other callers can also get the room to air their views on stories of interest to them. I still have Rachel Tanzi with me in the studio. Thank you so much, Rachel, for doing this. All right, let's take a look at the Daily Independent newspaper. And on the Daily Independent, we have the PNID ruling in favor of Nigeria, victory for Africa. This is coming from Tinubu, as UK court quashes the $11 billion arbitrary award against Nigeria. Clears the former Lagos IG Shashuri of bribery charge. More detail can be found in the paper. Tinubu OK's Poverty Alleviation Trust Fund with $5 billion yearly. FEC approves new draft policy to regulate solid mineral sector. Rectifies acceptance of $3.45 billion World Bank loan. Detail found in the paper. The big story says federal government set 10-year target to finance the $3 trillion infrastructure stock, with detail assures of plan to improve foreign exchange liquidity. Says Nigeria expects $10 billion in forex inflows in weeks. Commence student loan program in January 2024. Other story on the paper, we have Supreme Court dismisses Adeyemi appeal against APC Odudu. Orders appellate to pay respondents $1 million naira each. You can find detail of that on page 6. Deputy Governor impeachment Ondo Assembly again writes the Chief Justice to constitute investigative panel. More detailed in the paper. PDP Atiku can't get victory through the court. APC vows. Hello, good morning. Hello, we are with you. Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you very much. My take on this issue of construction. I'm with you. So I'm so happy that the Senate is, investigating some fraud about this. And what bothers me most is the road from Makodi to Otupo. You understand? They should investigate and lock up, the person involved who they've been giving this contract, so-called, maybe, I won't mention name, but he's been giving it out to his wife, and that road remains dilapidated. That road from Makodi to Otupo, they should investigate it very well. Let Akume help him, at least if he has the interest of his own state at heart. Sincerely speaking, is so unspeakable of that leader who has been leading for 4 consecutive times in power. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much. I'm really happy with the callers beginning to draw attention to certain routes.
And also the federal government will do something about the Makodi to road. Yes.
Independent, where we are having Army has acquired electronic warfare capabilities. You can find more of that story on page 6. Parliamentary workers to short National Assembly, State Assemblies tomorrow. You can find more of that on page 6. Atiku Obi Tinubu fate hang in the balance as Supreme Court reverses judgment on appeal, dismisses the APM appeal against Tinubu. With detail of that story found in the paper. The last story on the paper is on the dismissal of the $11 billion award against Nigeria, damning indictment of predatory international investors, says the AGF. You can find more of that on page 6, and that's all on Daily Independent newspaper.
News Direct.
All right, let's take the call. Good morning.
Good morning, sisters. How are you?
We're great. Fine. Thank you so much.
Yes, your brother Sheman Kaduna.
Please go ahead.
From Kaduna, Sele and Rachel, my sisters. Yes. Honestly, the narration of Nigeria call for our lamentation every time. Can you imagine we are the highest crude owners and we own crude more than any other nation in the whole of Africa? But we are taking crude outside and bringing petrol to the expense of Nigerians. Can you imagine fuel in Kaduna here is 750 naira in some police stations, and the fuel is not even lasting. The fuel is too light. If you buy fuel 5,000 naira, you can't drive it to office and bring it back home. And we have a country called ours, and all these resources are our own resources that we are taking out to go and refine and bring back the product. I want to go with Obasanjo that said we'll never get it right, except if we start our own refining here. If we don't stop this habit of taking crude outside the country and come back with products to use, my sisters, we are not going to get it right in this country. Let Tinubu write his name in gold by doing the needful, by controlling all the way that people are using to corrupt this country. People are investing in this country too much. Somebody will sit on billions and go scot-free, and nothing will be done about that. I still entreat on this man, the Accountant General of the Federation, that left with 193 billion naira, and nothing was done about that. Look at his life. Money is being carried away by our elite that would have helped this country to restructure, to come back to what it's supposed to be. Nigerians are suffering. Nobody is smiling. My sister, I'm telling you, in offices today, you hardly see somebody come to office 2 times a week because of hardship. Is that how it's supposed to be? People are being forced to be corrupt. People are being forced to rail on doing better. I pray that the prayer is my prayer for God to get inside in this country. Lastly, let the judiciary do the needful. All that they are doing, Nigerians are seeing them. Nigerians are intelligent. We're intelligent enough to read and write. So all their pranks, we are waiting to see the outcome of the Supreme Court. But if it is the will of God that is Tinubu that will come and rescue Nigeria, let God show himself. Let God show himself. I keep on saying this. If God sent Tinubu to be a Messiah to rescue Nigeria, let the will of God be done. Good morning, my sisters.
Thank you so much, Shamal. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I really love your contribution and all the matters that you touch. And I hope that this will not just fall on deaf ears, but our leaders are actually listening and the right thing will be done to make sure that we fix Nigeria to become that country that we'll all be excited about. I mean, I remember when you and I said the right time to have removed the first subsidy was since that 2012. Where we had a lot of people coming out to agitate and say no, it shouldn't be removed. But then that would have been ample time for us when the economy was still good, when the forex crisis was not as bad as it is, and they will be able to fix our refineries. But I believe that it's not late. We are determined to fix our refineries, because with the way things are moving and then we're seeing a lot of firms are shutting down, that would affect everybody eventually. So we hope our leaders will take the caution and then do the right thing as well.
I mean, honestly said, I'm a little bit worried about the free fall. I mean, everybody should be about the dollar, because the thing about money and its value is that it's a very slippery one. And we've seen economies gone from something to zero, where when you keep allowing your currency to keep falling down, you know how much you take to the market and how much you come back with. And Nigeria is heading to that level as it is now. And then I'm not seeing the government putting in policies that will help stop that, because now we are opening our borders to more and more imported goods, rather than continuing with what we're doing and then hopefully finding balance. And then it's scaring a lot of way, because you don't even want to imagine it. So I just hope when it comes to our refineries that the government acts quickly. This is one thing that I believe, that if the government of Nigeria really wants what's best for the economy, within a very short period of time, we should be having a refinery functional, being able to process, to refine a good amount of petrol for our consumption, even if it won't meet, for a start, the daily consumption of petrol in the country, as long as it will reduce how much of petrol will be imported into the country, is a step further. So we'll just wait and see what the government of Nigeria is planning on doing on our economy. But truly, we are heading towards a scary slope, and that is not the one to imagine. Still on Nigerian News Direct, we have blame labor. We have a caller.
Good morning.
I want to comment on the
Please, can you reduce the volume of your TV set, sir?
The National Assembly wants to buy 160 million for Nigeria, for the Senate.
Hello, sir. Please, can you turn down the volume of your TV set? Control room, can you just help us? We can barely hear him to end the call. All right, thank you so much. Please, to our callers, do remember to turn down the volume of your TV set. We can barely hear you, to our last caller who called in. Please remember to turn down the volume of your TV set so that we can actually really understand the point you're trying to make, and other viewers as well. Thank you so much for cooperating.
On Nigerian News Direct, blame LPG operators for increase in price of cooking gas. A statement coming from NALPGAM. And on Cargo Airport, Ogun to commence commercial flight, signed concession agreement in 45 days. The big story on the paper, CSU certificate, technicalities, stalled admission of Atiku's evidence in Supreme Court. INEC APC Tinubu plead with court to classify Atiku's evidence as inadmissible statute bed. Supreme Court reserved judgment in Obi Atiku's appeal. APM withdraws appeal against Tinubu. You can find all the details on page 4. UK court declares PNID contract fraudulent, exempts Nigeria of $11 billion arbitration award. LAWMA seals Alaba International Trade Fair market for breaching environmental laws. Borno governor reopens Monday market, waives 2 years rent for 8,000 traders. You can find details on page 3. Tinubu signs 2 executive orders to boost FX liquidity. This is coming from the finance minister. IHS pledges 1 billion naira to fund federal government 3MTT training scheme. You can find details on page 2, and these are the major headlines on Nigerian News Direct.
Let's take a look at the Voice of Liberty. We have $10 billion forex inflow expected in weeks coming from the finance minister. Legibility court OK suit seeking to sack the new EFCC chair Olukayode. You can find more of that in the paper. How the past government mismanaged billions of naira for cargo airport coming from the Zamfara government. Tinubu applauds Nigeria's landmark victory as UK court squashes the $11 billion PNID award. After over 5 years of legal fireworks, Nigeria has finally succeeded in halting the enforcement of the $11 billion arbitration award in favor of Process and Industrial Development, that is the PNID Limited. You can find detail of that story in the paper. Coming from Katsina State, bandit invade community, kill policeman, lecturer, and 7 others. The issue of insecurity is getting out of hand. We call on security operative to be fast and do something about the issue of this. And on Forex rate, we have federal government pledges to honor legitimate obligations. You can find more in the paper. And on asset forfeiture, court chief Dazeni sued against EFCC to December. And on Tinubu certificate, Supreme Court received conflicting letters from Chicago State University. So I think as a cross concerning what the final verdict will be. You can do well to find more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you in the paper.
On First News newspaper, Supreme Court justices depleted to 10 as Datito retires. Federal government, Benue government seeks collaboration with communities to resettle IDPs. NDIC to pay liquidation banks, creditors, depositors 1.6 billion naira soon. This is coming from the managing director. And from Wike, Pandev Lambas Gumi says any Nigerian can be FCT minister. And at the downside of the paper, we have Boko Haram attacks customs house in Yobe and kills officer. Borno bans street begging and lottering. EU to invest 5.4 million euros on teachers training in Nigeria. And on farmers killing Igbo who gives head a 7-day ultimatum to vacate the southwest. And that's all the news on First News newspaper.
On the Vanguard newspaper, state FCT grows the IGR by 1.6% to 1.9 naira in 2022. State FCT grows the IGR by 1.6% to 1.9 trillion naira in 2022. Data found on page 19. Nigeria wins $11 billion PNID case in the UK court. FEC approves $5 billion annual humanitarian poverty elevation trust fund. And on autonomy, state assembly staff begin nationwide strike tomorrow. You can find detail on page 4. And Kogi governor polls, Supreme Court affirms Odudu as APC candidate. Attack on Tinubu and Wike, Northern elders disown Gumi. You can find more detail on page 9. The big story says presidential tussle. Atiku CSU evidence not admissible coming from Tinubu, the APC, and INEC. Justice Okoro 11-man Supreme Court panel reserved verdict on Atiku and Obi's appeal. Says there are conflicting letters from the CSU. Atiku's fresh allegation has elements of crime coming from Justice Okoro. Why court should overlook technicalities coming from Atiku. Court dismisses the APM case for being frivolous, and then PDP deluded in for spectacular defeat at the Supreme Court, says APC. You can find detail on page 5. And on subsidy removal, exchange rate unification, we have achieved desired objectives coming from the President, Tinubu. We have few columns for sport and also another coming from IDB. And then we're still having at the summit. You can grab the Vanguard and read detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On Business Day newspaper, the big story, UK court dismisses $11.5 billion PNID award against Nigeria. Tinubu hails verdict, says victory is for Africa. How Nigeria plans to solve $10 billion to fix FX crisis. You can find details on page 2. Sales of banned toxic mercury-laden cosmetics shift online. We have NES 29 Naira speculators in trouble as federal government moves to digitize forex exchange market. Investigation deadly threat to Nigeria's organic skincare industry hides toxic secret. You can turn to page 24 for more details, and that's all the news on Business Day newspaper.
The program this morning. Thank you so much,
You're
Rachel, for
welcome,
doing this
Sarah.
with me. Thank you to our callers who called on the program this morning. We're truly grateful for your insight, contribution on the story, and to every other person who have been a supporter of Echo Television. Until we come again tomorrow, do have a blessed day ahead.